This presentation is about the process of planning an electric vehicle road trip. It uses the drive from San Diego to the Route 66 Fun Run as an example. Road trips come in three basic flavors. Many people associate a road trip with a cannonball run, where the objective is to get from one place to another as quickly as possible. Another type of trip is to take off and go wherever whim takes you. You may not even know where you'll be spending the night until you get there. The third is having a destination in mind, but part of the fun is sightseeing along the way. What better choice could there be for a road trip than driving on Route 66, also known as the Mother Road? For over 30 years, there's been an annual fun run on a stretch of the original route from Seligman to Topeka, Arizona. When I plan a road trip, there are two hidden agendas: fear of missing out and fear of better options. Sometimes I have returned from a trip and learned that I was close to a place or event but missed out because I didn't know about it ahead of time. What are the primary objectives of this planning? Most important is participation in the Route 66 Fun Run. And any trip should be stress-free. Some views may be nicer at night, but driving new roads only during daylight is safer and lets you see more sights along the way. Last but not least for this trip, we want to use only J1772 and CCS chargers available to anyone. As a point of reference, we'll use the range and charging characteristics of a Chevy Bolt in this planning. Since we want only daytime driving, it is good to check online for the sunrise and sunset time for the days we will be driving. At this time of year, we will have over 13 hours of daylight. Another thing to note is that we'll be crossing a time zone boundary. In this case, it does not have any effect, since Arizona does not observe daylight savings time. This means the Pacific Daylight Time of California is the same as Mountain Standard Time of Arizona. Google Maps is a popular choice for the first look at any trip. It tells us that we will cover about 380 miles to get there and take about 6 hours of driving. However, there are also optional routes. With that overview in mind, we note there are several considerations to think about. Since there are route options, do we want to go one way and return another? Is 380 miles or 6 hours too long for one day? Do we want to break it up? What sights are along the way that we might want to see? Google shows us traveling on major highways. Do we want to drive additional stretches of old Route 66 that parallel the freeway? I like visiting the website roadsideamerica.com to get an idea of what sights I might encounter along the way. You can also learn a lot just by playing with Google Maps. Between map view, satellite view, and street view, you can get many ideas. While planning a trip through Utah, I noticed something on the map called the Mars Desert Research Station and put it on my list of places to visit. Roadside America also noted the Hollow Mountain Gas and Grocery was in the area too. The main thing to remember is that the computer lets you travel anywhere virtually, and you can get a good idea of what you want to experience in person. Another website that should be part of planning any EV road trip is plugshare.com. With it, you can find charging options for your type of EV based upon a map location. For example, you can filter by connector type and payment options. We'll be visiting PlugShare more as we continue our planning process. ABetterRoutePlanner.com is another important tool we can use. There are both free and paid options. Enter parameters about your car, your start and end points, and let it tell you the optimum route and needed charge stops. Again, more about A Better Route Planner later. Let's make some assumptions about the considerations mentioned earlier. First, we will break up the trip going and overnight in Barstow. This will mean an extra day, but will make for a more relaxing trip. We can use PlugShare to find a motel to overlap charging with sleeping. Since we are taking an extra day, we can use the time to explore more of Old Route 66 and the sights along the way. Since we'll probably be anxious to get home after the event, we'll plan to cannonball home from Topeka. A Better Route Planner shows us taking the I-15 freeways from San Diego to Barstow. We'll drive about 180 miles and take about 3 hours plus a 10-minute charge stop in Grand Terrace. While A Better Route Planner shows Grand Terrace as the charge stop, we can check PlugShare to see other options. There you'll find that an Electrify America station is a mile north in a Walmart supercenter. The Grand Terrace Library location may be a little cheaper and quiet, but the Walmart gives the option to overlap charging with lunch or shopping. From there, we may want to get off the freeway in Victorville and drive the old Route 66 to Barstow. For much of the way, it is near the railroad tracks. Once we get to Barstow, the Mother Road Museum beckons us to learn more about what this road meant to American history. Next, let's look at the destination charging options found on PlugShare in Barstow. There are 2 motels, as well as nearby ChargePoint and Electrify America fast chargers. We'll drive about 250 miles and take about 5 hours plus a charge stop and Needles on the way to Kingman. We have the option of taking some more of the old Route 66, but flash flooding in 2014 and 2017 damaged over 40 bridges, so it is still closed a little past Amboy. We can add a bit of charge and Needles at the Electrify America charging station. Note that there is a McDonald's across the street and a Jack in the Box just past it, if you are looking for something to eat. However, if hamburgers aren't part of your diet, you may want to pick up something else before you charge. You will note that PlugShare shows no motels in Kingman with destination chargers. There are 2 public J772 plugs, but we will probably need to use one of the 7 Electrify America CCS plugs. Plan to charge at Electrify America and choose any motel that suits your budget. Note that the official event covers 3 days. The run itself starts in Seligman, but most events are in Kingman. Pick up your registration packet when you arrive in Kingman on Friday. If you are up for more driving, you could then drive I-40 to Seligman for the parade on Friday and return later. However, this adds 150 additional miles of driving for the round trip with no en route charging options. However, you will need to drive the 75 miles of I-40 to Seligman Saturday morning and join the official fun run start. The drive back to Kingman on old Route 66 is 90 miles. Remember that a slow scenic drive improves the range of an EV, so there should be no range anxiety. There are events planned at towns and businesses along the route to keep you entertained. You'll be back in plenty of time to enjoy the events in Kingman. On Sunday, there is a breakfast followed by an award ceremony. In addition to the Fun Run Awards, the Electric Vehicle Association has some awards of its own. From Kingman, you'll drive 50 miles on old Route 66 to the Fun Run finish line in Topeka. There, participants will receive patches and enjoy other festivities until 4 p.m. Again, we decided to cannonball home from Topeka. A better route planner takes us down I-10 and stopping at a charge point in Indio. From there, we work our way down I-15, getting home at around 10 p.m. Another possible option is return via Blythe. It might take a few minutes longer, but could be a better option if your home is in South County. Let's review driving lengths and charging. Taking 2 days getting there makes for a relaxed drive with a charge stop in the middle, doubling the chance to get out and stretch. There's no reason for range anxiety since the car could complete each day's drive on a single charge. Charging is available at each overnight stop, and events don't stress the car's range. The cannonball to home could be broken up, but most people are willing to put up with some discomfort to get home that same day. Another thing to consider is charging infrastructure. A better route planner has us using DC fast chargers on 2 networks, Electrify America and ChargePoint. While you can pay as you go, membership is worth considering. Joining EA's Pass Plus for $4 per month drops the price of each kilowatt hour from 48 cents to 36 cents. That's a savings of $27 for the 230 kilowatt hours we expect to use on this trip. In any case, it is probably a good idea to have an account with several charging networks. This example is but one way to plan this trip. If you take away one thing from this presentation, it should be that trip planning itself can be fun. Using the computer to pre-check sites along the way can be fun for the whole family. Echoing the disclaimer, in every car ad, your mileage may vary. It has been almost 10 years since I planned and took my first EV road trip. I posted a video on YouTube detailing my adventure. Hi, on October 26, 2013, I took delivery of my Model S. Just 3 days later, I set off on a solo road trip from Mexico to Canada using just the Tesla superchargers for fuel. How many of you have heard of the Lincoln Highway? The Lincoln Highway was started in 1913 as the first transcontinental road for the automobile, running from New York to San Francisco. It was initiated by businessmen that wanted to promote the market for automobiles and support products. Tesla's planned network of superchargers seems to address a similar purpose. Which comes first, electric vehicles or charging infrastructure? Tesla's answer is both. Supercharger dots connect into routes similar to the Lincoln Highway. The ability to take road trips helped me rationalize my purchase of a Model S. With a son and in-laws in Washington State, I had my first destination. My daughter in Anchorage would have to wait until the Alcan Highway gets electrified. However, there were still a few gaps in Northern California and Southern Oregon as I awaited delivery. This meant spending some time on PlugShare finding ways to fill the void. But, as luck would have it, new superchargers came online in the days just before my delivery. So, at 8:45 a.m. on October 29th, with just 179 miles on the odometer, I took off on a solo journey headed north from the Mexican border. 39 hours later, at midnight on the 30th, I was at the Canadian border. While there, I documented reaching the endpoint, which ironically was 100 years to the day after dedication of the Lincoln Highway. I had stopped at 11 superchargers and spent one night in a motel. The logistic details of my journey can be seen summarized in this spreadsheet. My first charge stop was at Hawthorne. After a couple hours at cruising altitude on the freeway, it was time to come in for a landing. Navigation brought me in from the south on surface streets. In my mind, I was visualizing the Rocket Road address and missed the left onto Jack Northrop Avenue. Once navigation dropped me at my destination, I fumbled my way between the buildings and, after one ask for directions, found my first supercharger. The walk for some lunch was a little over a mile round trip, but it felt good to stretch my legs. My next experience was with Tejon Ranch. Here I failed to note that there are two separate exit ramps, one for east and one for west, so I wound up spending a few minutes looking around on the wrong side of the freeway. I found Harris Ranch without too much problem, but I drove all the way around the resort parking lot before I saw the chargers behind some bushes at the front entrance. Once connected, I walked over to the Subway convenience store for a sandwich and noticed two more superchargers by the restroom. The trip to Folsom ended with a bad case of range anxiety. An MS driver I met at Tejon Ranch and noted that the leg from Harris to Folsom was a long one, so I did charge up a little extra. I thought 244 miles of range should be fine to cover 192 miles of road. Navigation takes you up Route 99 and other dark country roads. I had just 4 miles of range left when I reached the charger. With hindsight, I think the temperature drop as night fell was my undoing. Getting to Corning was easy. However, it was my first time to use a back-end charger. Note that you don't want your bumper too close to a signpost. The liftgate extends about 6 inches past the bumper as it arcs up. Be careful not to push the open button if you're not watching. I stuck to Reading for my overnight stop as a holdover from my PlugShare planning. It is almost exactly the halfway point. An email announcing the first supercharged trip up the west coast was in my inbox. I woke to frost on the windows and a noticeable reduction in range. This made me a bit nervous after the Folsom experience. I made it to Mount Shasta with 32 miles of range, despite a significant elevation gain. The charger is just off the freeway and close to where navigation drops you as a destination. The Grants Pass charger is located at the far back of the Black Bear restaurant. This is on a one-way road with northbound 5 traffic coming in from the left lanes. You need to quickly merge right through traffic coming from the southbound 5 to turn into the parking lot. I made a loop around the block on my first pass. The Springfield charger is somewhat tucked away in the parking lot of a Holiday Inn. First, there are some tricky lane barriers coming off the freeway. Fortunately, there was no traffic, so I could look around while creeping along. Woodburn is in the far back corner of a small shopping center just off the freeway. Once cruising in the lot, they were not hard to find. The Centralia supercharger is in a side street parking lot. Fortunately, there are good sight lines and I found it with no problem. My last charge before Canada was in Burlington, where they are located in a motel parking lot. I was back in familiar territory, but still missed the access road in the rain and had to make a small loop back. I reached the border in the minutes just before midnight, but did not want to risk any crossing hassle having just temporary registration. I took the last possible exit from the freeway and looked across the border fence into the customs control area. Mission accomplished. Next destination, bed. I learned a lot along the way, especially the value of a plan. My return trip included attending the Tesla Finish Line event in Seattle. My son was with me on the first leg south, so there was a stop at the Portland airport for him to fly home. As an engineer, my primary planning tool is a spreadsheet. With my Greenhorn supercharger experience under my belt, I have a better idea of a good process. Here's what I laid out for my return trip. Each stop got a row for arrival time and a row for leave time. I used Google Maps to get distance and duration of driving legs. I assumed an hour at each supercharger to replenish the car, eat, chat with other owners, etc. Projected time of day and cumulative distance traveled dictated which stops should be an overnight. One important lesson learned was to no charge stops. Keep in mind that superchargers are not major landmarks visible for miles around. Your brain will be coming down from a high of open road driving to the clutter of random traffic. GPS will get you to a street address, but the charger itself may be tucked into a back corner of a host business parking lot. You must be alert to stop signs, curbs, driveways, pedestrians, and any number of other important distractions, all while looking for something not much bigger than a dorm room refrigerator. At some stops, your bladder may be looking for something else. The Tesla Motors website is a good start for a virtual visit. It has charger locations and hours of amenities. Hawthorne, for example, has a reception area and restrooms, but with some hour restrictions. Check out the map to see what is in the neighborhood. It will be your home for about an hour, and, depending upon your travel plans, you may be visiting here more than once. Note food options. Sometimes it may be wise to visit a drive-thru before stopping to charge. You can even practice a virtual drive-up. An easy way to do this is to right-click the map about a mile away from your supercharger to set a starting point for directions. Then, select the 3D button to see a virtual fly-in. This can make your first visit a déjà vu experience. The next lesson learned was what goes into calculating charge requirements. How many range miles you need depends upon a number of factors. First is the distance in road miles, which is different from crowfly miles. Then comes the elevation profile, outside temperature, climate control, speed, basic driving style, and maybe even vampire losses if you make an intermediate stop. There is a third-party tool to make these calculations for you at evtripper.com. Using it to predict range needed from Harris Ranch to Folsom is only 4 miles off from what I actually experienced. The tool can even be accessed from the car's web browser. But what if you are making these calculations seat of the pants while looking at the console? The first thing to note is that clicking on a supercharger icon will show you the crowfly miles. Only once you select Navigate will you see the road miles. Elevation profiles are familiar to hikers. Tools such as Google Earth can be used to preview routes between superchargers. It can be fun to look at these in advance and see where you'll be blasting up a hill or collecting electrons on the other side via regenerative braking. Outside temperature affects battery management and cabin comfort. This can change over the course of a leg based upon time of day and geography. Nights are usually cooler than days. This closely ties to climate control settings. Keeping the cabin warm while it is cold outside takes considerable energy. You can enable range mode if you want to minimize the impact of climate control. Driving smooth and slow is the common mantra of anyone trying to maximize mileage. Cruise control is a great means of speed management, but few buy a Model S with an intention of poking along the highway. A look at your own personal average watt-hour consumption is a good way to judge the impact of your driving style. Vampire losses can have an impact if you stop for a prolonged time along the way. My rude awakening in Reading was an example of that. If you don't want to strain your brain, 30% more range miles than road miles seems to be a safe rule of thumb for me. If your battery has room for more, you can bump up the charge for a better safety margin. Note when you pull into a supercharger to pick a different number from anyone else if possible. A and B slots share equipment, so charge time increases when kilowatts are split. Always be sure to check your phone app as soon as you walk away from your car. It provides a good double check that all is well. You don't want to come back after lunch to find there was a bad connection. The app also lets you know if there's time for dessert or another coffee refill. So, what did I learn about supercharger road tripping? Plan. Preview the supercharger site and environment. Familiarity makes it feel like home. Take windshield washing supplies. There are no squeegee buckets at superchargers. Choose a different slot number from anyone else. Watch backing in so you can open the liftgate without hitting a sign. Charge for road miles plus the extras. Verify charging. And use the phone app to monitor progress. Now I'm looking forward to a cross-country trip using superchargers. While it might not exactly follow the Lincoln Highway route, I did drive it a bit to utilize the Folsom supercharger. I'm having a blast driving a Model S. I hope you are too. Watching the video lets me relive that adventure and reminds me of what EV newbies can look forward to. The charging infrastructure has improved quite a bit since then, but the adventure remains the same. I took 3 major road trips last year. The one my wife and I took in the fall sent us around the country and covered 6,500 miles. I hope this has been useful, and you see how easy it is to plan a road trip. Living one is even more fun.